Before the first light of Denver's frosty morning broke, a single, chilling message shattered the calm of my world. A phrase in a language I barely understood yet recognized as betrayal, glaring from Mark's tablet. "We'll process hysterical profile. Custody will be ours." In that instant, everything changed. I stood in the muted silence of our family room, the chill of the early dawn mirroring the turmoil in my heart. The tablet, abandoned on the coffee table, glowed ominously as if daring me to uncover its secret. I recalled the years that had woven the fabric of our 20-year marriage, a tapestry filled with laughter, shared dreams, and promises whispered under starlit skies. There was a time when Mark's compliments warmed my heart, and I believed in the unbreakable bond between us. Our evenings were spent discussing future plans, and our quiet confidences built the foundation of our life together. Yet, in recent months, subtle cracks had begun appearing in that once solid foundation. I remembered his cold, dismissive words whenever I expressed concerns about our finances or decisions affecting our children's future. His shifting demeanor, camouflaged by the routine of work and responsibility, now revealed itself in that frozen moment on the tablet. I felt a jagged mix of nostalgia and betrayal. The home that once rang with the gentle hum of us planning vacations and celebrating small triumphs now seemed to harbor a secret too dark to confront. I recalled his gentle touch during cold winter nights and his laughter during family dinners. But recently his tone had turned sharp, critical of my emotions and quirks that made me me. I had endured his subtle jabs and condescending remarks, feeling that any expression of vulnerability was a weakness he could easily dismiss. The disparity between our past warmth and his present chill struck me deeply as I tried to piece together where it all went wrong. Shaking off the initial shock, I reached for the tablet again with trembling hands, determined to understand the full context of that cryptic sentence. My eyes scanned the screen repeatedly, absorbing every nuance, the deliberate choice of words and the cool, detached font that seemed to have no emotion beyond the message itself. I recalled overhearing Mark dismissing my concerns about his work priorities, and now the evidence on this device hinted at something far more calculated, a plan devised in secret, away from our shared glances and whispered hopes. Had he always harbored such contempt? The thought pained me, blending grief with a surging sense of betrayal. I wondered if this new discovery was the tip of an iceberg I had unknowingly ignored all these years. A creeping dread took hold as I considered that Mark might have meticulously planned every detail. Subtle comments that once I dismissed as mere forgetfulness now revealed a cold calculation behind his every word. I remembered a moment last week when he sneered at my so-called overreactions, labeling my emotional responses as a sign of incompetence at the very moment when I needed trust, not scorn. The memory reawakened the pain of feeling undervalued and manipulated, the weight of secrets piling upon secrets. I hesitated, yet my determination grew stronger with each heartbeat. With cautious fingers, I navigated through Mark's carefully concealed digital files, my pulse quickening as each tap revealed yet another layer of secrecy. The household, once a sanctuary of love and routine, now felt like the stage for an unfolding deception. Every quiet corner, every shadow seemed to whisper of hidden conspiracies. The air was thick with anticipation as I traced my eyes over the digital icons scattered across the home screen. My heart pounded louder as I discovered an inconspicuous icon tucked away among inconsequential file names. Its label, written in bold, unyielding letters, sent a shiver racing down my spine. Divorce strategy. In that moment, the weight of all my doubts and unspoken fears crystallized into a single, undeniable truth. I had stumbled upon evidence that Mark had planned our undoing, an elaborate scheme meticulously drafted to strip me of my identity, love, and security. The folder's existence was a declaration of war, a shattering confirmation of the betrayal that had lurked beneath years of shared smiles and silent compromises. Tears blurred my vision as I stared at the folder. Every memory of fleeting joy clashed with the sudden, harsh truth of calculated deceit. The world around me, once vibrant with promises of a secure future, now faded into a backdrop of uncertainty and fear. I could almost hear the cold laughter of a man I thought I knew, his ambitions laid bare in digital footprints that held the relics of his hidden hostility. In that crushing moment of despair, my thoughts raced. How could everything be unraveling so silently, so methodically? I sat on the worn-out sofa, the early morning light now seeping through Denver's old window, bathing the room in muted gold. I felt exposed, as if this secret had been waiting all along to undo my sense of security. Despite the overwhelming ache filling every fiber of my being, a resolve began to emerge, quiet yet powerful. I realized that while the revelation cut deep, it also offered a path towards reclaiming my life. I knew I could neither ignore nor deny this discovery any longer. Suddenly, as if fate itself intervened, I noticed a new subfolder tucked away beneath a series of unsorted documents, an anomaly that had escaped my earlier scrutiny. The label on it was as plain as day, yet it resonated with finality. Divorce strategy. My hands trembled uncontrollably as I hovered over the icon, the implications of its existence racing through my mind. What dark secrets lay ahead in the files yet to be uncovered? The silence in the room grew heavier, and as I braced myself to click, a distant sound of footsteps hinted that I might not be alone. And in that heartbeat, I realized nothing would ever be the same again. My mind raced with questions, each one tearing at the remnants of trust one had built over years. Was this a moment of unforeseen rebellion on his part, or was it the start of an orchestrated plan to dismantle the life we had built quietly? The pixelated screen showed no error. Its deliberate message echoed the cold detachment I had begun to notice lately. Every detail, from the casual folder name to the stark layout of his files, revealed a truth I was reluctant to face. I recalled countless evenings when his eyes grew distant at the slightest hint of discussion about duty or commitment. Now, those memories collided with the present in an avalanche of bitter realization that I had been living in a well-crafted illusion. In the quiet solitude of the early morning, the secret folder sank in as a harbinger of devastation he intended to unleash. My breath hitched as the gravity of the situation left me paralyzed, standing on the edge of an uncertain future. I trembled, caught between despair and a stubborn spark of hope that whispered I deserved better than the life Mark had secretly planned to destroy. I braced myself for the unknown, my heart trembling with fear and resolve. Helena's trembling fingers hesitated above the divorce strategy folder icon as her pulse pounded in her ears. With shaking determination, she clicked the folder open, and the screen filled with a series of meticulously organized files that revealed a plan so cold it seemed unreal. Each document was labeled with dates and precise financial entries, records of hidden bank accounts, suspicious transfers, and vouchers for expenses that Mark had sworn were necessary yet never openly discussed. There were memos that outlined his plan to cast Helena as hysteric and a weak-willed fool, intended to frame her as an unstable, weak-willed fool incapable of caring for their children. The written words, clinical and unfeeling, were designed to strip Helena of every ounce of dignity, casting her in a role that neither reflected her true character nor the years of her dedicated care. The shock was visceral, chilling Helena to her core as she scrolled through file after file, feeling the betrayal deepen with every revelation. Her mind raced with conflicting emotions as the early morning light spilled across the living room, melting the frost on the window pane. In that moment, memories of happier times flashed before her eyes, the quiet evenings spent together discussing dreams, the soft laughter echoing across the dining room, and the warm reassurance of Mark's embrace. Yet, the brightness of the day only seemed to emphasize the darkness of this discovery. The contrast was jarring. She recalled a recent afternoon when Mark had surprised her with a bouquet of wildflowers, a brief respite that had temporarily restored her faith in their shared future. In the silence of betrayal, I heard the echo of a love I thought was real. The memory now felt like a cruel trick, a reminder of the innocence that had been exploited and twisted into a weapon against her. With trembling resolve, Helena continued to sift through the files, her eyes darting over carefully imposed calendars, notes, and electronic correspondences. The documents spoke of a timeline meticulously engineered to coincide with personal milestones, marking significant dates that she was expected to forget: her birthday and anniversary, crucial family celebrations, all manipulated to serve Mark's hidden agenda. Among the papers, there was a digital diary entry that outlined each step to portray her as emotionally unstable, with language designed to demean her and question her ability to parent. The plan was chilling, and each line read like a prelude to an orchestrated downfall. Each entry appeared to be calculated not simply to condemn her, but to sever her ties to every fragment of her existing identity. As Helena absorbed the devastating details, the sound of approaching footsteps jolted her back to the immediate reality of the moment. The notebook of her life felt precarious, balanced on the edge of betrayal and hope. She forced herself to recall that moment on the previous night when Mark kissed her goodnight, his eyes carrying a subtle warmth before a fleeting moment of distraction, a small kindness amid the darkness. The recollection was tender but conflicted, casting her heart into the deep waters of uncertainty. She whispered silently to herself, "In the silence of betrayal, I heard the echo of a love I thought was real." However, as the sounds grew nearer, she quickly realized that her reprieve was coming to an end. Before she could collect her scattered thoughts, the sound of the front door opening echoed through the corridor. It was Mark returning unexpectedly, his presence announced by the creak of the old wooden steps. Panic mixed with resignation as she hurriedly shut the folder window and tucked the tablet behind a row of old novels on the living room shelf. She forced a calm mask onto her face, pretending that nothing was amiss while her heart thundered beneath the surface of composure. Mark's figure, outlined by the soft morning light, moved through the room with a tension that betrayed his otherwise habitual nonchalance. His eyes flickered momentarily as they swept across the room, and they landed on the spot where the tablet had been just moments before. Helena's heart pounded with dread as Mark's cautious gaze seemed to search for something out of place. She remained perfectly still, her breathing shallow and controlled, desperately wishing to cloak her panic with a veneer of normalcy. Every fiber of her being warned that silence was the key to evasion, but the weight of guilt and fear pressed upon her chest. In that fleeting second, she recalled Mark's earlier kindness, the way he had tenderly listened to her recount her dreams, and the gentle reassurance in his voice, moments that now felt like ironic contrasts to the man who was about to shatter her fragile disguise. Her mind churned, oscillating between the hope of salvaging their years of shared life and the despair of realizing how deeply she had been deceived. The film of betrayal had already begun rolling, unlabeled and unrestricted. In the silence that followed, the atmosphere in the room seemed to thicken with impending danger. Helena's mind was a swirl of shock and tentative hope, a hope that perhaps the man she loved could still be redeemed. She recalled that subtle smile he had given her last week when she complimented his work. That smile, so fleeting yet genuine, made her wonder if there was still a chance to salvage the remnants of their connection. However, as she contemplated the cruel irony of the situation, her fingers trembled over the tablet still hidden from plain view. She wondered if Mark's well-crafted persona was about to undergo its own unraveling, his hidden turmoils laid bare for all to see. The feeling was bittersweet, a desperate yearning for a return to simpler, happier times intermingled with the sinking certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. Just as Helena was gathering the courage to face the crushing weight of reality, a soft creak by the doorway pulled her attention back to the present. Mark had appeared in the threshold, his expression guarded and his gaze flitting toward the spot where the tablet had been concealed. His arrival shattered the fragile illusion of normalcy she had so desperately attempted to create. For a tense few moments, the house seemed to hold its breath. Helena's hands clenched around a cushion as she fought the rising tide of panic, her mind racked with the dread of being discovered. In that frozen instant, every memory, every promise, and every unspoken word of love and deception converged into a singular, overwhelming fear of the consequences that would soon follow. Then, a sudden tremor in Mark's hand drew Helena's frozen gaze back to the tablet. She watched in horror as his fingers began erasing files one by one. Each disappearing document confirmed her darkest fear. He knew about her discovery. The screen flickered with vanishing evidence while his expression hardened into unyielding determination. With every deletion, the room grew colder and her resolve stronger. Her heart filled with dread and defiance as she realized that his plan was being dismantled in real time, leaving their confrontation imminent and inevitable. Helena's mind raced as she silently vowed to confront him, knowing that this moment marked the turning point of her life. As the sound of Mark's hurried footsteps faded into the background, Helena's heart pounded like a relentless drum in her chest. With Mark actively deleting files from his tablet, a surge of panic coursed through her veins. In that frantic moment, she fumbled for her smartphone, its cool metal offering a small solace amid the chaos. The dim morning light filtering through the living room intermingled with the soft glow of the tablet screen, creating an eerie atmosphere that seemed to echo her internal distress. With trembling hands, Helena snapped several quick photos of the screen, determined to preserve the evidence before it was lost forever. Every flash of the camera was a small act of defiance against a betrayal that had slowly, insidiously eroded the trust built over 2 decades. Those crisp images stored on her phone were now her only tangible proof of a meticulously planned subterfuge, a plan designed to portray her as a hysteric and a Zayef Iradali Aptal. In that charged moment, she murmured softly, "In the shadow of his lies, I found the light of my own strength," affirming her resolve even as despair threatened to overwhelm her. After securing the incriminating photos, Helena's mind raced with determination amid the surging tide of fear. She knew that silence would only cement her isolation in the wake of Mark's manipulations. In a bid to seize control of her life once more, she began researching potential legal recourse. Opening her laptop, Helena typed swiftly, searching for guidance in this unforgiving digital age. Her fingers hesitated momentarily before arriving at the name Claire Daniels, a renowned divorce attorney in Denver who had a reputation for exposing manipulative spouses engaged in litigation abuse. The more she read about Claire's fearless advocacy and precise legal strategies, the more Helena felt a spark of hope pierce the darkness. Memories of quieter times, when love and mutual respect were more than just distant echoes, wove through her thoughts, even as betrayal cast a long shadow over her heart. Determined not to surrender to despair, she filled out a brief online form, detailing her situation with careful precision, convinced that this small step might light the way toward reclaiming her future. The next morning, as Denver's fog cloaked the streets in a soft, ghostly veil, Helena found herself seated at a modest table in a quiet coffee shop near her home. Her phone was clutched tightly in her hand, and every small sound seemed to echo her own anxieties. The cold, damp air outside contrasted sharply with the warmth of the coffee steaming on her table, a juxtaposition that mirrored the battle raging within her. Helena's thoughts wandered back to her days at the school library, where countless hours spent amidst books had taught her that knowledge was a powerful ally in the fight against injustice. Today, that lesson was more relevant than ever. The ringing of her phone broke her reverie, and on the other end of the line was Claire Daniels. Claire's calm, measured voice provided an immediate sense of reassurance as she listened intently to Helena recount the disturbing evidence. The attorney confirmed that Mark's actions were indeed a calculated attempt at litigation abuse, though she warned that pursuing this battle could provoke a sharp escalation. Every word from Claire reinforced Helena's budding determination, even as the threat of further manipulation loomed ominously. Bolstered by Claire's support and the clarity of legal guidance, Helena returned to the tense familiarity of her home with renewed resolve. The house, which once echoed with memories of laughter and tender moments, now felt like a battleground of secrets. Determined to compile further evidence, she embarked on a meticulous journey of documentation. Helena set up her smartphone discreetly on a bookshelf in the living room, activating its recording function. She knew that every remark from Mark, every condescending snort, and every carefully disguised insult would serve as a damning testament to his true character. Over the ensuing days, as Mark oscillated between forced normalcy and thinly veiled hostility, Helena captured his voice on tape. There were evenings when Mark would quietly berate her for perceived emotional excess, and in these moments, his tone was as cold as it was calculated. Each recorded snippet added a new piece to the growing mosaic of his manipulation, reinforcing her belief that this was not a series of isolated incidents, but a deliberate campaign to undermine her worth. That growing sense of empowerment was tempered by the chilling realization that Mark's behavior was slowly shifting from indifference to suspicion. His eyes occasionally lingered a moment too long on the spot where his tablet had been concealed, and his fingers would tap restlessly on the coffee table as if keeping time with an internal alarm. It became painfully clear to Helena that as she continued her discreet recording and evidence collection, Mark was beginning to sense something amiss. One afternoon, while reviewing the latest photos and recordings on a secure external drive, she noticed a subtle change on the tablet's interface. A small icon, previously hidden in the system settings, had emerged, a tracking application that Mark had silently installed. The realization hit Helena like a shockwave. This tracking app was designed to monitor every access, every digital interaction, leaving no room for clandestine investigations. In that instant, a cold sweat broke out across her skin, and a wave of dread mixed with renewed determination washed over her. The stakes had escalated beyond a mere secret folder. Every digital footprint now carried the potential to expose her efforts and jeopardize her carefully assembled case. Helena's mind whirled with the implications of this new discovery. She understood that the tracking app was Mark's insurance policy, a desperate measure to regain control over his digital domain. If discovered, it would not only alert him to her covert activities, but also tighten the noose around the evidence she had painstakingly gathered. Despite the fear that threatened to paralyze her, Helena knew that knowledge was power. Her heart clenched as she contemplated the price of her newfound empowerment, yet she steeled herself for the inevitable confrontation. Every whispered recording, every photographed document, was now a fragile lifeline to the truth. In that silent moment, as she sat before her glowing laptop with images of betrayal and manipulation spread out before her, Helena resolved that she would not allow this digital treachery to define her fate. Even as her pulse raced with both hope and terror, she pressed forward, her determination manifesting in every deliberate click and keystroke. Just as Helena finalized archiving her evidence, a sudden sound from the corridor froze her in place. The persistent digital alert had already warned her that Mark was becoming vigilant. The door creaked open, and Mark stepped in, his eyes narrowing as he surveyed the room. In that chilling moment, his gaze fell upon the tablet. With a flash of recognition, he discovered the tracking app, realizing with explosive anger that Helena had been accessing his most private files. The air thickened with tension, and Helena's heart pounded as her future hung in the balance. Every second ticked by like a heartbeat, and the looming confrontation promised irreversible change now. Morning's pale light had barely begun to lighten our Denver home when the fragile silence shattered like brittle glass. The door slammed open with a force that sent a tremor down my spine. Standing in the doorway was Mark, his eyes ablaze, his posture radiating an aggression that chilled me more than the icy wind buffeting the streets outside. "Helena, I know what you've been doing," he barked, his voice echoing with a mixture of fury and disbelief. His gaze was fixed so intently on me that I felt as though every secret I had tried so desperately to conceal was laid bare. "Are you spying on me?" he demanded, each word slicing through the air with a weight that threatened to crush me. I drew in a shaky breath and met his glare with as much composure as I could muster. "Mark, I only wanted to understand what's been happening," I replied softly, my own voice trembling despite my best efforts. His expression contorted with rage as he stepped closer, the tension in the room mounting with every measured step. In that charged moment, I recalled Claire's calm counsel and the strategic plan we had meticulously devised. Even as his seething accusations battered me, I repeated silently, in the storm of his anger, I found the calm of my own courage. Yet, beneath that recitation lay an undercurrent of fear, a fear that his next move might shatter any semblance of control I had managed to claim. After his explosive confrontation, Mark's fury receded into a grim, dangerous silence as he lingered, watching me with narrowed eyes that seemed determined to catch even the slightest tremor of guilt. I felt the oppressive weight of his hostility, every step he took resonating with the menace of a man desperate to reclaim his dominance. Though I remained outwardly composed, inside I was a maelstrom of alarm and resolve. I knew that the discovery of the tracking app was only the beginning of his calculated war against me, and I had to act swiftly. Following Claire's advice, I steeled myself to counter the baseless claims he was already formulating, the lies that would brand me as hysteric and a Zayef Iradali Abdul. I quietly excused myself from the confrontation, retreating to the quiet sanctuary of my study, where I could gather my thoughts and plan my next move. Determined to disarm his manipulation before his allegations could solidify into legal actions, I arranged an appointment for a full psychological evaluation. The evaluation was critical, not only to disprove his dangerous claims of instability, but also to reassert my identity as a rational, loving mother capable of protecting our children, Emma and Noah. The psychologist's office was a modest space accented by soft gray walls and gentle lighting, a striking contrast to the turmoil that had become my daily existence. There, I recounted my troubled experiences in a measured tone, carefully presenting myself as composed and resilient. With each deliberate answer, I felt a small measure of empowerment take root. The clinician's sympathetic nods and thoughtful questions affirmed that I was not the unstable, hysterical person Mark claimed me to be. In that quiet interview, I found solace and strength, and despite the emotional toll, I left with a renewed determination to fight against his unfair narrative. Later that day, I met Claire Daniels in her downtown office, a room lined with legal books and case files that told stories of past victories and hard-won justice. Claire's voice was steady as she went over the next phase of our strategy. "We'll let him file for divorce first," she explained, her eyes unwavering. "Then we'll turn his manipulations against him in court. His accusations and false narratives will unravel in the face of our evidence." Her plan hinged on exposing every shred of deception, from the photos I had taken of his tablet to the audio recordings of his demeaning language and the detailed psychological evaluation that would refute his claims one by one. The more Claire spoke, the more I felt a fragile spark of hope ignite within me. I saw a clear path emerging, a way to reclaim not only my dignity, but also the safety and well-being of our children. Her precise legal strategy was a lifeline, a promise that the truth would ultimately prevail over lies and manipulation. But even as hope began to blossom, Mark was not idle. Despite the mounting evidence against him, he had chosen to strike first by filing for divorce. That very evening, I received a formal copy of his legal petition. My heart plummeted as I read through his accusatory language, claims that I was Zayef Iradali and unfit to provide a stable environment for Emma, 15, and Noah, 13. Every word in the document reeked of contempt and cruelty, reducing me to a caricature of instability and weakness. The sting of betrayal was almost unbearable, yet I clutched tightly to the thought of Claire's determined strategy. I began methodically compiling every piece of evidence, the images of his tablet screen that documented his sinister plans, the snippets of his recorded condescension and manipulation, and even the detailed results of my psychological evaluation. Each new piece of data was a brick in the fortress I was building to defend myself against his calculated assault on both my character and my parental rights. Yet, as the days wore on and the legal storm gathered momentum, the atmosphere at home grew increasingly oppressive. One particularly frigid evening, as Denver's icy wind howled outside and rattled the windows, I sat huddled in our living room, reviewing the latest evidence on my laptop. The soft hum of the computer mingled with the distant sounds of routine household activity, all of it starkly contrasted by the rapid pounding of my own heart. I clung to the hope that, soon, the truth would be vindicated, and Mark's carefully constructed facade would crumble under the weight of his own deceit. Then, in the middle of the disquiet, a faint but unmistakable sound caught my attention, a low murmur, not of conversation, but of a secretive phone call. I crept quietly toward the source, my heart thundering in anticipation. Standing in the narrow corridor, partially hidden by the muted glow of the hallway light, I pressed my ear to the closed door of Mark's study. What I heard next froze my blood. His voice was low and dangerously calm as he whispered into the phone, outlining a new, chilling plan. He spoke of leveraging the custody battle, of using Emma and Noah as bargaining chips in what he described in monotone as a necessary step to secure his future. His words were laced with an unyielding determination, and they confirmed the worst of my suspicions. In that moment, despair clashed with a fierce, budding resolve. The plan he was formulating was not merely a legal maneuver, it was a calculated scheme to use our children as pawns, a gambit so dangerous that it threatened the very heart of our family. I stood there, frozen, as each word etched itself into my consciousness. The image of my children, caught in the crossfire of their father's ambition, drove home the urgency of my fight. I realized then that the battle ahead was not only about reclaiming my dignity and challenging his manipulative tactics, it was about protecting the innocent lives of Emma and Noah. The overwhelming sense of betrayal was now mixed with a determination I had never known before. I could no longer afford any hesitation. Every recorded snippet, every carefully stored photo, and every detail of my evaluation had become a lifeline in this precarious struggle. My hands trembled as I backed away from the door, my mind racing with the implications of what I had just overheard. The very house, the place that had once promised safety, love, and shared dreams, had turned into a sinister stage where my worst fears were coming alive. I knew that every step I took now was fraught with peril. The confrontation in the coming days would be ruthless, and the courtroom battle ahead would demand all the strength I had left. Yet, even as Mark's dark intentions echoed in my ears, I felt an unwavering spark of resolve kindle within me. I clutched my phone, the record of every incriminating detail now a beacon of hope amid the looming storm of deceit. The gravity of his new scheme precipitated a torrent of emotions, a mix of despair at the thought of my children being used as leverage and a fierce, defiant hope that I could fight back. As the final echoes of his call faded into a heavy silence that blanketed the house, I knew that the coming days would force me to confront not only an unyielding legal battle, but also the raw, unfiltered truth of the man I once loved. And in that critical moment of darkness and betrayal, I made a silent promise to myself. I would not let his cruelty win. I would stand strong, protect my children, and reclaim the life that was so unjustly being stripped from me. Before I could allow these thoughts to settle, a sudden soft click from the corridor sent a fresh wave of dread crashing over me. I froze, heart hammering in my chest, as another hushed conversation seemed to start beyond the closed door, a conversation that promised to expose more of Mark's dangerous plans. My blood ran cold as I realized that every moment was now a race against time. With mounting anxiety and a resolve hardened by previous battles, I knew that what I had overheard was only the prelude to an even darker chapter. The line between survival and destruction was now perilously thin, and every secret whispered in the dead silence of our home threatened to unravel everything I had fought for. And then, in that charged instant, I understood. The fight was just beginning. The day of reckoning had finally arrived. The old marble columns of Denver's Pima County Courthouse stood as silent witnesses to the battle of truth and deception. Inside, the courtroom air was thick with tension, every breath echoing the gravity of the moment. I sat stiffly in the witness chair, my heart pounding in unison with the slow, deliberate tick of the court clock. My hands trembled ever so slightly as I clutched the pile of evidence, a collection of photos, recordings, and the psychological evaluation that had affirmed my unwavering sanity. Across the room, Mark sat at his attorney's table, his face pale under the harsh courtroom lights. His eyes darted nervously as if each glance might reveal a panic he desperately sought to hide. I could see his reluctance to meet my gaze, the crumbling mask of arrogance faltering against the mounting truth. Claire Daniels, my steadfast ally and an accomplished divorce attorney, took charge of my case with a clarity and precision that filled me with hope. Her calm, assured tone resonated throughout the courtroom as she methodically presented my evidence to the judge. With each document displayed, the photos capturing Mark's secretive digital maneuvers, the recordings of his degrading, manipulative remarks, and the medical report that debunked his allegations of instability, Claire painted a vivid picture of a man whose true nature was masked by false charm. She explained meticulously how every deceitful act, every calculated omission, had conspired to dismantle my integrity and threaten my right to care for Emma and Noah. The judge listened intently, his eyes reflecting the weight of the evidence laid before him. As the proceedings unfolded, Mark attempted to defend himself with a feeble, stuttering rationale. His voice, once filled with confident menace, now faltered under the unwavering scrutiny of the judge and the relentless presentation of the facts. Every assertion he made crumbled, replaced by undeniable evidence of his manipulations. I watched as his posture shrank and his face turned ashen, the vibrant arrogance that had once defined him now nothing more than a ghost of desperation. His own words, carefully recorded and later played by Claire, laid bare the truth about his plan to undermine my capacity as a capable and loving mother. The judge's expression remained impassive as he absorbed the mountain of evidence laid before him. With measured authority, he recounted the sequence of events, each detail meticulously verified, each claim challenged by the weight of irrefutable proof. His gavel struck the bench with a resounding finality, punctuating the undeniable collapse of Mark's case. I felt the courtroom's tension shift subtly, the oppressive atmosphere giving way to a sense of impending justice. In that moment, the scale of truth tipped decisively in my favor, leaving once proud Mark isolated and defeated in the glare of his own duplicity. At the climactic moment, the judge delivered his verdict. Mark's attempt to portray me as a Zaif Iradali Abdul fell apart under the scrutiny of every shred of evidence. The court ruled in my favor, granting me full custody of Emma and Noah, legal possession of our family home, and the immediate freezing of Mark's assets pending further investigation. A wave of relief and triumph washed over me as I heard the finality in the judge's voice. My journey, mired in deception and betrayal, had led to this moment of vindication. I was no longer defined by the lies he had spun, but by the strength I had cultivated in the crucible of his deceit. As the gavel struck one final time, marking the end of the trial, a quiet murmur of awe filled the courtroom. I could feel the eyes of everyone present shifting, a mixture of admiration and disbelief at the meticulous unraveling of Mark's treacherous plans. In that charged atmosphere, a sense of closure took hold, a promise that justice had prevailed. I sat in quiet contemplative silence for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of what had occurred. Every piece of evidence, every wounded word from Mark, had contributed to this turning point in my life, validating the strength that had carried me through so many dark hours. As dusk began to pour its golden light over Denver, I found myself outside the courthouse, stepping into a new chapter of life. With each step, the memories of betrayal and heartbreak melded into the rich tapestry of my past, while the promise of a brighter future beckoned. I could almost sense a metamorphosis within me, a transformation from the woman who had once been ensnared by Mark's lies to someone reborn from the ashes of his deceit. His failed attempts to control my destiny were now nothing more than a cautionary tale to be left behind. I whispered to myself, from the ashes of his lies, I rose with a strength I never knew I had. The final act of this tumultuous journey unfolded as I stepped into my new home, a modest but welcoming residence nestled in a quiet neighborhood of Denver. The living room, bathed in the soft glow of a dying sunset, exuded warmth and promise. Emma and Noah, who had been caught in the crossfire of our shattered past, greeted me with tentative smiles and open arms. Their presence was a balm to my weary soul, a tangible reminder that despite the relentless tide of deception, genuine love and resilience could prevail. Together, we began to imagine a future built on truth and mutual respect, a life rekindled by hope and strengthened by our shared determination to overcome adversity. As I settled into the comforting rhythm of this new life, I took a quiet moment to reflect on the arduous path that had led me here. The scars of betrayal, although still tender, had matured into symbols of the resilience that had carried me through the darkest chapters of my marriage. Each piece of defiant evidence, each courageous step, had woven together into a tapestry of empowerment. In that reflective solitude, I realized that everything I had endured was not in vain. The courage to stand up against Mark's manipulation, the wisdom gleaned from every painful lesson, and the love of my two beautiful children had all converged to redefine who I truly was. Finally, as dusk settled completely and the golden hues of sunset gave way to the soft glow of evening, I embraced the promise of a fresh beginning. I returned to my new home, where the simple yet comforting decor echoed the peace I had fought so hard to reclaim. Emma and Noah met me at the doorstep with joyous enthusiasm, their faces alight with hope and relief. In that moment, the pain of the past receded into a distant memory, overshadowed by the radiant prospect of our future together. I gathered them in my arms, feeling an overwhelming surge of love and gratitude, knowing well that the darkest storm had passed and a new day had dawned. Standing in my new home that night, with calm replacing the chaos of yesterday, I knew my life had irrevocably changed. Surrounded by the love of Emma and Noah, I embraced my newfound identity with gratitude. If this story of resilience inspired you, subscribe for more tales of strength and justice.